So welcome everybody to the Synergy Women podcast. My name's Nikki Hamilton. I really look forward to sharing some information with you today. And the topic I'd like to explore today is the topic of values and how we can use them to steer our ship and how we can use them to stop comparing ourselves with others. Because it's a really common thing, I think, especially in this day and age of social media, Instagram, is to spend a lot of time comparing your life to the perceived life of somebody else. And so the way I'll enter this conversation is by exploring the work of Dr. Demartini. Now, I'm a trained Demartini facilitator. I love Dr. Demartini's work. And one of the areas that Dr. Demartini spends a lot of time talking about is really understanding what it is that you value in life and ensuring that you dedicate a large portion of your day to fulfilling that to ensure that you have a fulfilling life. Now, these value life areas he divides into 7 sort of key areas. Now, there are different lecturers all over the world that divide our areas of life into different sections, sometimes 5, sometimes 6. He's divided it into 7, and I think that works. So the 7 key value areas of life that Dr. Demartini talks about, first key value area is spirituality. So if you can imagine someone like the Dalai Lama, he highly values spirituality. So he spends his entire day, week, life traveling the world, teaching, lecturing, learning, sharing all about spirituality. So his highest value area in life, you can pretty clearly see, is spirituality. And what we know about value areas is often your value areas in life become really apparent because they show evidence of becoming true. So I don't think the Dalai Lama could say, oh, look, I really highly value my finances. It's really not necessarily showing any evidence of coming true. What shows evidence of coming true is how your life appears and exists and how you live it. And the Dalai Lama clearly highly values spirituality. So that's one value area in life. Another value area in life would be finances. So somebody who's a banking CEO or a multi-billionaire clearly has a high priority that they place on building wealth. That's not a good or a bad thing. It just is what it is. That's what they highly value. And so that's one area of life that we can divide, one of the 7 areas of life. Another value area would be vocation. So if you can imagine someone like Richard Branson, so someone who has entrepreneurial skills, that builds businesses, that has a varied career path perhaps, or highly values their career, is someone that would place a lot of priority on their vocational area of life. So we've got spirituality, we've got finances, we've got vocation or your career. Another area is your mental or learning area, so your education. So if you're thinking about that, you could think of someone like Albert Einstein, who dedicated his entire life to learning and to education and to exploring all sorts of facets and understanding of maths, physics, the universe. So Albert Einstein would highly value education, learning, and the mental area of his life. I can't imagine that Albert Einstein necessarily would spend a lot of time on his finances, for example. But he's dedicated his life to one key value area, and he's held true to that, which means that he's had a hugely successful but very fulfilling life. So I've got spirituality, finances, mental, vocational, physical health or physical well-being is another value area in life. So either your wellness, your energy, how you look, your appearance, all kind of comes under that bucket. Another area of life would be your family. So obviously your children, your partner, your immediate family. That's another value area in life that for some women is the greatest value area. And the last value area to explore is social causes, social connections. So if you can imagine someone like Oprah Winfrey, she highly values social causes and social connections in her life. And she's been able to use her strengths in communication and effective connection with people, to be able to interview people, and used her strength in social connections to steer her ship to create a great business out of her highest value area, which is social causes and social connections. Now, you can almost imagine, really, if you stay true to your highest value area, it can have the knock-on effect of overflowing into other areas of your life. For example, if we think about Oprah Winfrey, she highly values social causes and social connection. She's really great with that. She uses her strengths in communication and interview skills, and as a result, the financial area of her life has expanded greatly. Now, I can almost guarantee that if Oprah Winfrey set out at the beginning of her career and said, you know what, I'm going to try and be a multi-billionaire, let's explore the stock market, she probably wouldn't have had quite the success that she does today, because in her heart, that's probably not what she values. In her heart, she values her social causes and connections, and she's used that to pull herself, including using her strengths, to create a great career and a great financial bucket as well. So knowing and really understanding what it is that you value in your life can create the magnetic pull to keep you going in the right direction. And I think a really good example that is often shared with Dr. Demartini, and I'll share this with you now to remember in the way that values steer you, is if you can imagine a 5-year-old kid who highly values video games. So if you imagine a child that also want to do is play video games. So if they're playing a video game and they've been playing for an hour against other friends, and they get to the end of their game and they lose, what happens next? Generally speaking, if that kid loves that video game, they might have a little mini meltdown, but they'll try again. It's like, let's have another go. So ultimately, if you're doing what you most value in life and you pursue what you most value in life, if you reach a challenge or an obstacle or something goes wrong, you're more likely to have the energy to keep going. So you start pursuing challenges and moving through challenges with more enthusiasm and with the capacity to move forward without letting it knock you flat. Whereas if you can think about this, for example, I don't value video games at all. It's not what I value in my life. So if I were playing a video game and I got to an hour and I'm starting to think I'm actually really bored of this, and I lost my video game, I wouldn't keep going. I'd think, well, fine, stuff that. I'm just going to close the door and find something else to do. So if you're not doing what you highly value in life and you reach an obstacle or a challenge, you've got a really high chance of giving up. So staying true to what you most value means that you can conquer obstacles that come your way. The other side of that coin is if you can imagine that 5-year-old kid, again, playing video games, and he's getting to his top score and he's playing against his other friends, and he gets to the hour and he's still going and he wins. Just say he wins his video game. Do you think he's going to stop there? Probably not. So what happens when you're doing something that you love, even if you're succeeding, what will happen is that you start to pursue the next challenge. So for that child that's just won his video game, he might go, oh, well, that was level 7. I wonder if I can conquer level 8. So if you're following the pathway of something that you truly love, that fulfills you and is highly valuable to you, what will happen is if you reach obstacles, you're more likely to overcome them. And even when you're succeeding, you're more likely to pursue challenges that keep you rolling in the right direction. So this is the benefit of really knowing and understanding what it is that we most value in life. So how do we find that out? There's a few questions that you can ask yourself to try and figure out what you value in life. And often there's 2 or 3 areas that hold most true for people. And I will say that your values do change throughout your life. They're not concrete. So what you valued when you were 12 years old is going to be different to what you value when you're 18 and what you value when you're 20. So it's worth reflecting on this every 12 to 18 months, perhaps asking a few questions. Am I still on track with what I value, or have my values shifted a little bit? But either way, as your values shift, they still become the magnetic pull that you need to have a fulfilling life, to live life with enthusiasm and joy despite your circumstances. So the questions that we commonly ask when trying to determine what it is that you actually value, the first question that I would probably ask someone would be, what fills your immediate space? So when I look at my immediate space in my house, so the space that I spend my most time in my house would be in my office. And in my office, I have a yoga mat, a meditation cushion, and a laptop. And what I want to know on the laptop is, what do I actually use that laptop for? Do I use the laptop to look at the stock exchange? Do I use that laptop to post on Instagram? What is it that I'm using my laptop for? So in my immediate space, what fills my immediate space most commonly? And what do I actually use that for? And so my highest value areas in life are my health and the health of others. Another key value area of my life has been learning, education, and teaching. And so on my laptop, I've always got courses that I'm doing, courses that I'm creating, things that I'm learning. So whereas if I look at the Facebook tab, I tune out of that pretty quickly because I'm not really interested in social media too much. So what fills your space? What do you most commonly use it for? And exploring that will give you a few ideas about what it is that you truly value. Another question to ask would be, what do you like to talk to people about? What lights you up? So at a cocktail party, or at a dinner party, or when you're with friends, what do you find yourself gravitating toward with conversation? Or another question to ask would be, at a bookstore, where do you gravitate? What books do you like to buy? So whenever I go to a bookstore, I nearly always find myself at the health, psychology, or spirituality, or brain section. I love learning about brains and neuroscience. So I nearly always end up there. My husband nearly always ends up sort of in the history section. He loves reading about history. So we all sort of gravitate to a certain area of the bookstore, and often that will be an area that we truly value. So knowing what it is that you gravitate toward in a bookstore, what you like to talk about, what fills your space. Another question to ask is, what do I spend my money on? Now, obviously we spend our money on our mortgages or our rent and our food, and these are the basics of life. But if you had spare money, and you have spare money, what do you find you spend it on? And I recall a time when I lived in London. I lived over in London for about 5 years, and I remember my accountant at that time doing my annual tax, and he'd look at my all of my receipts for the year, and he'd be like, "You spend a lot of money on courses." And it's like, yeah, I do. I love learning. This is what I spend my money on. At that time in my life, my values were travel and learning. Now, I've obviously travelled less over the last few years, especially with COVID, but my passion is still learning. So given any choice, if I've got spare money, I'm spending it on courses, because that's what fulfills me. So what is it that you spend your money on? What part of the bookstore do you gravitate to? What do you talk about with other people, and what lights you up? What conversations do you like to have? What fills your immediate space, and how do you use it? These are the questions that you can start to ask to really understand what it is that you value, and kind of which of the 7 areas that kind of fits. Like, is it spirituality? Is it finances? Is it education and learning? Is it my career? Is it my family? Is it my social causes and social connections? So these are the questions that you can start to ask yourself, so you get a bit more of an idea of what you value. Now, the key part of this podcast that I'd like to share is, once you understand what it is that you truly value, the key is to not assume that what you value is above somebody else or below somebody else. It's really, really common for women to look around and start comparing yourself to others, especially, like I said, in the day of Instagram and social media and Facebook. Everyone's posting something, and everybody's life on the outside you can perceive to look so much more glamorous, healthy, happy, whatever it is. And that constant comparison can actually leave you feeling very unfulfilled. And the comparison can start to happen when you start comparing values. Say, for example, imagine I am a woman at home and I have 12 children. And clearly, because my life is showing evidence of what I highly value, my highest value is my family. And I live next door to a woman who has a Porsche and runs a really international multi-million-dollar business. And this woman in the Porsche next door with the multi-million-dollar business leaves at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym and then to do her work in the city in her business. And she gets home at 9 o'clock at night and has a chef to prepare her meal. So if I were the woman with the 12 children, if I were to assume that the woman next door, her values were above mine, I would start to say, gee, that's amazing. I can't imagine how wonderful it must be to have your own business. I've always wanted to do that. Do you know what? I might even start my own business. I'll try and start my own online business. Hang on, just let me attend to these kids first, and then I'll try that, and hopefully I can keep going. Oh, I've done this for 6 months, and this is really, really hard. I'd so wish I was the woman next door. So this story happens when we make the assumption that someone else's values are above or superior to ours, which is actually not true. So that is one scenario where you've made a comparison to somebody else and started to assume that they're above you, which is absolutely not true. So just because someone values business or their finances doesn't mean that those values are above or below yours. They're just different values. So knowing and understanding that, the other scenario that can start to happen is that you assume that your values are better than somebody else's. And this can be a really common scenario. So imagine that woman again at home with the 12 children, and she's got another woman next door who's the businesswoman with a Porsche and a lot of money. And if you highly value family, you could find yourself in a situation whereby you might go out to lunch with some other women who also value family, so you're really good friends because you share the same values and you understand each other. And you might say, can you believe Betty next door? She leaves home at 5 o'clock, she gets home at 9 o'clock at night, all she does is work. I don't even understand, she doesn't even have time for her own husband. How is this even living? So you could find yourself looking down upon others and assuming that your values are better than somebody else's, simply because they don't match your own. And in actual fact, that's one way to pride before fall. That's one way to start a cascade of negative events in your own life. And that constant comparison of whether you're above or below somebody starts to drive all sorts of reactive behaviours. I'm going to react to this now because you're not matching my values and you're not meeting me where I want to with my values, and my values are above yours. And you're clearly doing the wrong thing with your life because it's not what I would do. So, the message out to women, I believe, is to find what it is that you truly value. And knowing that you can kind of loosely divide it into those 7 areas. So is it your spirituality? Is it your family? Is it your learning and education? Is it your physical health? Is it your social causes, social connections? And it might be a couple of areas, and that's okay. Find what it is and start doing this on a daily basis in order to have a more fulfilling life so you don't constantly feel depleted. If you're doing something that you don't value, you start to feel depleted and you start needing external motivation to keep going. So like I said, with the video game scenario, if I were to play video games, there's no way I'd keep going. I just don't have any motivation to do it. And someone would have to come around and slap me on the wrist to keep me motivated. So if you're requiring external motivation to continue to pursue doing something, it's probably not what you value, and you've really got to start to question, do I need to spend all of my time doing this, or can I find something that I truly value, and that way your internal intrinsic motivation is what keeps you going. So the first key tip, so if I talk about the 3 key tips that you can take away from today's podcast, the first one is to find what it is that you truly value. Know that it will shift with time. It's not concrete, it's movable, but if you can dedicate part of your day or part of your week or part of your life to that, you will certainly have a greater sense of fulfillment. And one of the key things to know is that when you find something in what it is that you truly value, you tend to lose time. So time will travel really slowly when you're not doing something that you love. We all know that. So when I'm looking at my profit and loss and banking and ATO statements in Xero for my business, I'm not loving it. I put it off. I procrastinate. I need external motivation. I need my accountant to go, Nikki, you haven't actually completed that task for the month. And I drag my feet. And when I'm doing it, time goes like super slowly. I feel like I've been doing this for an hour and it's only 5 minutes. So, but when you're doing something that you highly value, time just disappears like that. So when I look at what I highly value in life, when I look at studying, learning, preparing things to teach and share to help women with their health, my time evaporates. I can look at the computer and realize, oh my God, it's 6 o'clock and I've been here for 7 hours straight and I didn't even know it. So questions to find your own values are: what do you spend your money on? What fills your space and time? Where do you lose time? What do you like talking about with friends and family? What area of the bookstore? Where do you spend your money mostly, aside from on the basics? So understand what you value. The next key tip is spending some time on that each day, week, month, whatever it is that you can, in order to keep yourself fulfilled. The last key tip is to make sure you don't compare yourself to other women, because everybody's got different values and they're not above or below you. Just because someone values their finances or values a different area of their life, like social connections or causes, just because someone might value their Instagram account doesn't make them a better or worse person. It just means that they're pursuing what they value, and you have to continue to pursue what you value, and understand that each person's values makes for a fulfilling world that has service to others. So thank God somebody out there values finances more than I do, because then I can offload that task to my accountants and I can get some help, which means I can focus on what I need to do. So offloading things that you don't value to others that do is a great way of creating service, connection, and a great community. So I hope this podcast has helped shine some light for you on maybe what it is that you value, maybe why you've needed external motivation in your life in different areas, and where you don't need that. Like if you've got intrinsic motivation, that's where your highest value is. But the key point I wanted to get across for today is to just drop the comparison. If you're a woman with 12 kids and you're loving family life, then love that and offer that out with complete joy and sincerity, without assuming that the businesswoman has a better life, because she doesn't necessarily, and without assuming that your life is above somebody else's, because that's not true either. If you're a woman that loves your career or loves building wealth, don't assume that someone who's got a big family is above or below you either, because they're not. So each woman has a jewel within that they need to shine out to the world, and that jewel within that you shine out is closely linked to what it is that you value in your life, and then how to use your strengths to shine that out is a way forward. So I hope that summarises how values work in your life, and how to not compare yourself with others and keep going in the direction that you need to in your life. If you'd like to know more about the Rise Up method, which is what I teach on my retreats, my Rise Up retreats, which helps women guide their lives through obstacles and challenges. If you've been struggling through a challenge in your life, then our retreats are certainly something that can help you with that. Understanding your values is part of the retreat. So I really look forward to sharing that. I've got a couple of retreats coming up this year you can check out on our website. I hope you all have enjoyed the podcast today. Have a great day, and thanks so much for joining me.